I'm going to talk about how you can create your own luck.
It's something with practice and with the right question, it opens up the world to connection.
You can literally connect with everybody. It doesn't matter what background they're from, what nationality, which company. Literally, the first way to connect is just to smile at them.
If you go in with a curious, interested mind, it's going to lead you somewhere fun.
You have something in common with literally everybody. It's a question of making the effort to find it.
Hi, my name's Eileen Schaefer. Welcome to What's Possible, a show for high performers who want to take their leadership, well-being, and overall life satisfaction to the next level. Today, we'll be learning something called the Serendipity mindset, a foolproof way to create personal connections quickly. Have you ever had a hard time connecting with a colleague? Could you use a quick way to get beyond the surface chit-chat and into more interesting conversations that actually connect you? Getting to know someone can be hard. That first meeting can feel awkward, like you're grasping for straws, trying to find something, anything to say. You're not alone. Many senior leaders who appear to have a wealth of confidence struggle with connection. As we start to meet in person, it creates a whole new level of angst for some of us, even when you've known someone for years. Of course, you've probably known them for years on Zoom. Believe it or not, there is an easy way to fast-track connection. With this in mind, I have brought in Jayaraman. JJ will help us answer these two questions. In a world where we have been so isolated, how can we break out of our shells and build connection? And two, how can a serendipity mindset take us from strangers to friends, or at least create a comfortable connection in that first meeting? This is why I'm thrilled to welcome JJ, a master connector, builder, and manager of high-performing teams, executive coach, and former Microsoft executive. I think you'll agree, he's the ideal guest to uncover the secrets of the serendipity mindset and how it can bring us closer. Welcome, JJ. Great to have you on What's Possible.
Thanks, Eileen. It's great to be here.
So, JJ, as you know, you and I had a conversation not long ago, and you brought up the serendipity mindset, which I had never heard. And one of my favorite things is connecting with people. I love asking questions. I'm curious to get underneath and figure out how people's minds think, where they've been. And I had never heard of the serendipity mindset. And so when you brought that up, I thought we need to have a conversation live about it so more people are aware of the serendipity mindset.
Yeah, that's great. And fire away.
Absolutely. Let's first get a little bit about you. What got you interested in connecting in the first place? I'm curious about your background.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm fairly extroverted, and I grew up in a family where we had lots of friends visiting all the time. So it was natural for me to form bonds, connections. It was nature and nurture. We all like spending time with people that we get along with. And one day I was talking to my parents and I said, I get along with so many people, but I don't get along with X, Y, and Z. And they said something very interesting. They said, did you try everything to find a connection? And then it clicked. I said, maybe we don't give people the opportunity to connect with you. So are you throwing hooks out there? Are you talking about yourself? And that's why I started saying, okay, what can we do to maximize the possibility of making connections to ideas and people? And that will slowly segue into a serendipity mindset thought process as we'll get to later on in the conversation.
Just want to highlight the kind of taking the onus for, did you find ways to connect? Because we always, you'll sometimes go into a conversation and you're hoping they say something that interests you. But if we turn the tables around and you say something that interests them or connects them, I love that advice from your family or friends. And it makes me think of my mom, who we used to tease her. She would do a 45-minute special, and that was her connecting as she walked through town. And that was her gift. She was finding ways to connect. So you just hit a light bulb for me in terms of, that's how she did it.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You can literally connect with everybody. It doesn't matter what background they're from, what nationality, which company. Literally, the first way to connect is just to smile at them. Everybody wants to connect with somebody who's smiling. Nobody said, Eileen, you smile too much.
Good point.
They can say you're grumpy, but nobody's going to say you smile too much.
Yeah. Well, and we know it's contagious when we smile. So it already
It is.
starts to shift the brain processing in the other person. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So I'm curious. It's interesting. Did you try this out on some of those people who you didn't connect with before? As you started getting these wise words from people, did you put them into action with some people you struggled with?
Yes. So it started becoming, you get good at something only if you're deliberate at it. So even when they talk about Tiger Woods and they say, oh, it's 10,000 hours of practice, it's not just 10,000 hours of practice, it's 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. So it's something one has to work on. And you still may not connect with everybody, but it's just a question of giving yourself the opportunity to connect. And that's what the serendipity mindset gets into. It talks about how do you throw out hooks into the universe to be able to connect with people, to find common ground. And it's actually been different in a, kind of Zoom or Microsoft Teams world versus doing stuff in person. To me, doing it on Zoom always felt unnatural. People were coming up with these contrived stories about how wonderful life was or something depressing. Whereas I think when you're in person, it became much more natural. And I always say, hey, tell me 3 things you're interested about. So I run workshops and I tell people, everybody, tell me 3 things you're interested in so that you're giving every person, if there are 3 people, there are 9 chances to connect. So if I just say I work at XYZ, it's not as interesting as I work at XYZ, I play basketball and I love, I love National Lampoon movies or, something like that. So
it's such a simple question. Tell me 3 things you're interested in. And you could do that at a cocktail party. You could do that at an offsite. You can do it on Zoom, have people go into breakouts and say, tell me 3 things you're interested in.
Yeah, and it's interesting, when you talk about this, I hear people say, hey, I'm an introvert. How do I do it? I don't feel comfortable. So the other day, I was at a dinner where I didn't know many people, and there's this book I'm writing, and I knew just the host. So I told the host, hey, I'm on this chapter. I'm not sure what to do. Do you have any thoughts? Or do you think any of the other guests here may have some feedback for me? And there, the host introduced me to people. So you can find ways to connect if you set your mind to it. And there are specific techniques that you can get into as well, which I will talk about as we continue this conversation.
Well, now you have me wondering about your book. So we need a 5-second detour for you to share what book you're writing.
So this is actually about lessons that you can learn from everyday life and how seeming accidents can turn to incredible outcomes. Or it could turn to nothing, but for the most part, you can have some incredible outcomes. And there are some great stories. This book was shaped by some of the experiences that I had. And those are the things that I will be talking about.
Oh, okay. You're going to be coming back on the show so we can hear more about the book at a later date. That sounds fascinating. So let's talk about connection, which my guess is that somehow woven through your book as well, through the maybe accidental meetings, who knows? But when we think about people struggling with connection, and I'm curious, any thoughts on, and we're going to dive even deeper into the serendipity mindset, and you might want to weave that in now, but any thoughts about, as we do return to more in-person events, it heightens some angst for some of us. Others, it's one of my clients calls it nearsighted, where you're nervous and excited at the same time. So I think some people are nearsighted about it. But any thoughts that you're having around kind of that return to more touch points in person?
Yeah, so a lot of the workshops I do at different companies are all in person. Most of them are in person now. So for me, a technique I use, which is again about a serendipity mindset, is I've got 2 choices. When they say introduce yourself, I could say, hey, I used to be at Microsoft, I'm a coach, and I teach, and this is going to be a fabulous session. You're going to get so much out of it. You'll form new friendships, etc. Or I've got option B, which is my fallback, which is my plan A. I always say I'm XYZ. I'm a connector of people and ideas. I'm a technologist. What I do now is I run workshops and I'm a coach. But what I really want to get better at is magic. That's what I'm learning. So what this does is people have 3 ways of connecting with me. They can say, hey, I work in the same industry, work in the same company, or magic is a surefire way, but it's something I actually learn. And anybody can have any interest. So people want to connect with the human side of you before they connect with the professional side of you. And that's what leads to outcomes. So that's how I work in a setting where everything is in person.
I love that because, again, you're asking other people. First, if you're meeting them one-to-one, you're asking them, tell me 3 things you're interested in. When you're a presenter, you're doing the same thing yourself. And our audience often presents, I'd imagine, some of the people, our listeners, they're getting up presenting. And so I love that idea of giving that kind of that added personal touch. And of course, now that you said magician, I want to hear more. And I'm curious, how many people ask you on the spot to do a magic trick once you've said that?
Oh, literally everybody does. Everybody does. But I'm still learning. When you start learning when you're older, for me, my policy is I learn something new every year. And this January, it was magic. So I'm getting better, but it's hard. You have to practice. I just want to know, if you know 4 good magic tricks, you're set.
How many do you have so far?
I have 2, but they're like basic stuff. So I'm learning the more complex ones. But it's about engaging the people. And what I always say is, in a workshop, I go first so people feel comfortable about sharing their story. I set the stage, and then everybody else follows suit. People get more comfortable. And to me, finding these connections is really what a serendipity mindset is. It's about being receptive to the idea of finding enjoyable things by chance rather than it simply being planned or purely intentional. You just create more possibilities. To me, luck is like a one-handed clap. You're born into a rich family or you win the lottery. Whereas a serendipity mindset is it's a two-handed clap. You take the right actions to create opportunities, then it's up to you to respond or not. You're sending out different stimuli out there, and you see what the response is, and then you in turn respond to it. So to me, that's what a serendipity mindset is. And I didn't know what it was called until I read a book. There's a book called Serendipity Mindset by Christian Bush. Really, really interesting book. And it's a lot of the stuff that I did already, but he packages it so beautifully. And there's an interesting podcast, and it's actually a lot of fun when you talk about it. And the possibilities are literally limitless when you have this kind of mindset. It's a very positive mindset. And it's not skill, it's not luck. It's about working hard to be lucky. It's about shifting your mindset to open up the opportunities. So in every setback, there is an opportunity. It's up to you to grasp it.
What I really love is it puts the control back in our hands. So, and I like how you wove in growth mindset with it too, because oftentimes people feel like I don't really connect well with people. I'm just not good at it. And what I hear you saying is we all can be good at it. And it's just as you're learning magic, it's by virtue of practice and by really thinking, how can I connect? What can I put out there about myself? So what are some 3 things I could share that might connect people? And how do I start a conversation? Like you said, tell me 3 things about you, or something of that nature where you can really have that give and take. But it's something with practice and with the right question, it opens up the world to connection.
Yes, it does. And it's different to the kind of classroom setting where you say, speak about yourself versus something that comes naturally at a cocktail party. Over a glass of wine, you say, hey, I love a Malbec, but what I'd really like is a fresh orange juice. So it's about being natural about your interactions that makes a really, really big difference to making these connections. And, I wasn't good at it for very long. But I used to travel a lot. I used to meet customers all over Europe, and they tell me stuff, and I'd say, wow, that's interesting. And I'd get back and say, darn, I don't remember a thing of what he said. So then I got deliberate about actually taking flashcard notes after every meeting. And it's serendipity, that was the opportunity, but capitalizing on it is keeping track of those connections and saying, hey, how was your holiday? You tore your meniscus. How did the surgery go? It's that follow-up. It's to show interest. It's to show caring for the other person.
Oh, I love that. And it really requires being present, being very present. Oftentimes, and I think when we're nervous, we do this. We get in our own head and we're thinking, what am I going to say next? Instead of really just listening to who's the person next to you, who's the person across from you, what are they saying, what are they feeling, and getting more in tune so that you actually are taking it in and can have that meaningful follow-up too.
That's actually a fabulous point. And I'll tell you a really nice story about this. It's about being present. You can't lose the forest for the trees. You need to know how to respond to the stimulus that's thrown your way. So I used to travel extensively, 70% of the time. And after every trip, I used to tell my daughters about the people I met and what was interesting about them. And so they got into this habit of, it's good to know about people, etc. And I'm going to talk about how you can create your own luck by having this kind of mindset. I remember vividly 2016, my daughter had moved from the East Coast to join a startup in the Bay Area. And she'd gone to have dinner in the city in San Francisco, and she was coming back home. She was going to catch Caltrain, but Barack Obama was in town, and she got stuck in traffic, couldn't take Caltrain. So she decided to Uber pool, and she gets into this car where there's this couple sitting. And my daughter joined a startup, which within 2 weeks she knows was going to go belly up. She said, Dad, there's no future here. I said, okay, start looking. There's no shame in joining a company that isn't going to succeed. Be happy doing what you're doing. So she gets into this Uber, and there's this couple sitting there. Let's just call them, Joe and Mary. And they said, hey, you're a single girl. We'll drop you off in the South Bay before we come back to Mountain View. But she had to go to Sunnyvale. And he says, my daughter starts talking to them about a bunch of stuff. She initiated the conversation about music, about wine, and, about technology. She said she loved technology. And she said, I'm actually a psychology and sociology major. And the wife, Mary, chimes in and says, hey, that's my background as well. So they start speaking about that. As they're dropping it off, Joe says, hey, I love the way you spoke with us. You were authentic. You connected with us. I'm just coming back from my company's IPO party. And if you play your cards right, you can be employee one after the IPO. And he started laughing. So my daughter also laughed. And then she says, so what do I do? He said, get me your resume before I get into work. Now, this is the point about different people react differently to the same response. Option A, she could have said, yeah, I'll get my resume in. But the next question was how she created her own luck. She said, Joe, when do you get into work? He said, 7 a.m. So she gets back home and says, what should I do? I said, look, it's past midnight now. If you're serious, you're going to get it out to him. And so she sent her resume, worked there for 4 years, then did really well, went to grad school, blah, blah, blah. But this is the point about creating your own luck. She created the connection. You don't know where it's going to come from. She was throwing out different things out there because she'd heard me talk about how you speak with people and make connections. And then she had the presence of mind to ask the right question that created an opportunity out of a casual statement, out of get me your resume before I get into work. And she said, when do you get into work? Maybe she'd have still got the job. But when he went in at 7 a.m, he saw that at 3:10 that morning, she'd sent her resume in. So this is the part about being present in the moment, asking the right question. But it's muscle memory. You have to train your mind to do it. And you make a lot of mistakes. So I always tell people, think about the opportunities that you may have had if you'd played your cards right. Things that you may have said. And this isn't this brilliant repartee and this cunning riposte to something someone said. No, look at the positive. Say, this person said this. Could I have responded differently? And it makes you reflect. And as you reflect on it, you learn to become more aware of what's being said to you and responding in the right way. So to me, that's my story about how you can create your own luck in a sense.
Yeah. And just thinking about it from even a positive psychology or appreciative inquiry lens is instead of beating ourselves up, what do you want to do differently next time? So we start to prime the brain for how am I going to show up differently? Instead, it's so easy to go down that tunnel. Why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say that? And you can do that. And what you can do is say, next time I'm going to ask, what time does he get in the office? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. However, we cannot leave our listeners without knowing, did she get the job? Is she at that company?
She got the job. She worked there for 4 years, started really well, paid for her grad school. She got a couple of degrees and she's still working in the Bay Area. So it's a great story. But I tell you, it needs to work just once for you to get into the habit. It's like golf. You could play 17 holes terribly. On the last hole, you hit that great drive down the center, great approach, make bird. And you're going to come back the next week. So you got to do it right just once. And there are so many stories for me that I can pick on in my life that, sometimes terrible outcomes turn to incredible outcomes. There's a story of when, again, this is another example. Back in the 90s, I was traveling from, I think, KL to Jakarta, and I got into a plane with this gentleman sitting next to me. He says, "Hey, how are you?" I said, "I'm good." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I run, I love cricket, and I work in finance for a telecom company." He said, "Really? I love cricket as well. I'm from Sydney, Australia." We spoke about cricket for 20 minutes. He said, "Have you been to Sydney?" I said, "Yes, I have." He said, "Do you like it?" I said, "I hated it." He said, "That's a strong response, young man. What's triggering it?" I said, "Well, I'd come from San Francisco, flew in on a Friday, got there on Sunday for a meeting with this company, let's call it Telco. And Sunday night, they said, hey, we can only meet on Tuesday. Monday, they said, we'll meet on Wednesday. And on Tuesday, they said, the meeting's off, we can't meet you. So I went back to San Francisco after spending time at the hotel and, just walking around the city. I think I was really disrespected there. He said, hey, that's unfortunate. But this was all very authentic. And we'd spent 20 minutes talking about cricket and a bunch of stuff. He said, if you need help, let me know. I've been in Sydney for many years. So I said, sure. He said, can I give you my card? I said, yeah, I have mine. He gives me his card. And I put it in my pocket. He said, you only know my first name. I said, that's enough, isn't it? He said, no, you need to see the full card. So I look at the card and it says, XYZ, chairman of the board, the telco, the company that it, and I'm still in touch with him. So, but the thing is, and I just burst out laughing. I said, David, this is too funny. He said, isn't it? Isn't it funny for you? And, we're still in touch. This is like 26 years later. I'm still in touch with him. I mean, he's retired and everything. But this is the point about, you speak about a bunch of things and who knows what the outcome is going to be.
Absolutely. I think, and if you go in with a curious, interested mind, it's going to lead you somewhere fun. The more you put into the conversation, the more you ask questions and find those touch points. So if you were to just give a one-sentence definition of the serendipity mindset, because our listeners might go home and they're thinking, oh, this was interesting. I need to explain it to somebody. But it's hard to kind of grasp. We know now it's, finding touch points that you connect. It's throwing out 3 interesting things. We know maybe how to do it. But what would you say is the definition in your mind?
For me, it's about being willing to surrender to opportunities and responding in the present. So if you keep your mind open to what could be, it's probably what will be.
Oh, I love that. If you keep your mind open to what could be, it's probably what will be. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm thinking about so many people have lost their jobs over this last year. It's been an outrageous number of job loss. And I've been thinking a lot about, as you're talking, how the serendipity mindset can really also help people, not unlike your daughter in the taxi cab, but also even in an interview, because it's hard. You feel nervous going into an interview. And that is a way that I think we could kind of almost calm our nerves and be able to ask the interviewer, tell me 3 things that are, important to you, or 3 things that you love, and you could share the same. But something I'm curious how you might use the serendipity mindset for someone looking for a job or in an interview. Sorry, let me back that one up. Let's do it in an interview.
Yeah, so for me, it's about doing my homework, and it's about speaking about you're being called for the interview because it's a certain table stakes is competency. So that's a given. They're looking for the other things. And if you can speak, at least allude to the other things that you do that you're interested in, they're looking for well-rounded people. And that doesn't mean you're going to get the job, but it's a chance to make a connection. It could be this, you play the same sport, you live in the same city, you champion the same causes, whatever it may be. But the way I look at it is getting the job is a good outcome. But what happens if they say you aren't going to get the job? Even then, you can't look at it as a setback. You can choose to say, thank you, can you give me feedback? Or you can flip it around and say, are there other companies you think might be interested in what I'm doing? So I haven't been through a similar situation, but it's about trying to turn a seeming negative into a positive, and accepting that maybe just wasn't meant to be. So the job situation, I don't think selling people in competency, unless you're a coder, in which case you go through coding interviews, etc., at a junior level. It's more about connecting with the person by finding common ground early and smiling. Just keep smiling, and that's you're going to get into an elevator and you smile at the other person. You have 2 choices. Elevator full of people. It happened to me this morning. I was going to meet a client. I go in and I said, hey, who's going to the 4th floor? And I say, and someone said, I am. And I say, oh, okay, the button's been pressed. And I said, great. This is the office I'm going to. Where are you going? And who knows where that could have gone. They could have said, you're actually come to meet me, or this is what I do. Or I had the option was getting in and just looking at my shoes, seeing that number 4 was already pressed. So it's about giving yourself opportunities to connect. And that's the way I look at it. Even in an interview, assume that you're good enough to get the job. It's the intangibles. It's, do they actually like you? Typically, within the first couple of minutes, the interviewers kind of made a decision. Am I going to hire this person or not? Are they a good cultural fit?
Yeah, I always say that it's, people are looking to see, would this be a fun person to work with? Some of these jobs that people are interviewing for, it can be long, it can be grueling hours, it can be intense. And if you're in a room with this group of people, they want to make sure, do I like you? If we're going to be working these long, hard hours together, or we're going to be, going through some bumps and tough times, are you someone who's going to help bring some levity, whatever it is, but being able to show your true self through an interview. And I think what I hear you saying, a way we can use that serendipity mindset is to be able to think about, what are 3 things that I want to share about myself that are not on my resume?
Exactly. And at one of the companies I used to work in, we used the final question when we were deciding on the candidate would be, are you willing to travel with this person for a week? And no matter how good they are, if the answer was no, it would be a no hire. Wow. And it's just the way it is, because we assume you're good. You learn your skills. It's how you get along with people. And getting along is about finding common ground. You have something in common with literally everybody. It's a question of making the effort to find it.
Oh, I love that. All right. And that leads us into, at the end of our show, we have a tradition of doing 1-1-1. And so it's taking everything we talked about and really distilling it. I always want our listener to be able to go away with something tangible, something they can think more about, something they can do, feel, etc. So are you willing to play this with me and give some thought?
I'm going to give it a shot. Right. Yeah.
Excellent. And maybe we'll have you do a magic trick at the end.
No, don't do that.
That'll be another show. Okay.
I'll do the magic disappearing man.
Exactly, when you hit end. Okay. So our first one is, what's that one big takeaway that you hope people leave with?
I mentioned it before. Be open to opportunities. Think it's going to happen. It's positive psychology. And send out as many stimuli as you can into the universe and to people, and you will get a response. Then you train your mind to be able to respond to that response or to capitalize on it. So it's be in the present, keep your mind open to opportunities, and remember they're there everywhere.
And I love that. Think that it will happen, and it will, but it's not just close your eyes, hope it'll happen, and you wake up. It's then create it. Think it'll happen and actually do the work to make it happen. So,
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Love that. What is one mindset shift that you hope our listeners walk away with?
So be aware of what's happening around you and frame the world. There should be a paradigm shift saying there's something that's going to happen and keep looking out for it. It's not this eternal quest. But you've got to be able to look at it as there is some good outcome that's going to happen. And you have to work at it. It's not a one-handed clap. So I think that's the mindset shift that you have to have. Frame events as there's something out there in it for me, not in a material way, in a very authentic, non-confrontational way.
And if we're going to leave them with one action, something plug and play, low-hanging fruit, something easy they can do right when they hit end on this podcast, what is that one thing they can do that could turn a stranger into somebody they actually connect with?
So there's a couple of them, and I don't know how to rank it. So I'm going to give you a couple of them. The first is, write down 3 things that you're interested in today and see how often you can weave it into a conversation. And track how often you get those responses. I promise you're going to have people respond to it in one way or another. And because you know what? They may say, actually, I'm not interested in magic. What I really like is riding. Oh, I like biking. I don't run. It could be anything. So that's one. Second is some basic stuff to connect. During lag times, don't look at your smartphone. Actually trying to speak with the person. And the third is a catch-all. Smile. If you don't smile, nothing else matters. Smiling is the first step to connecting. And connecting with people, connecting with ideas. Because people share opportunities with people that are positive. And this is almost, I think serendipity mindset it's positive psychology. Sending out the right energy, and it will happen. I use it extensively in my coaching. I always say, so what do you have in common with them? And if they say nothing, I say, sorry, not a good answer. I said, what did you not have in common with them? So have you been through the discovery process? So for me, those are actually 3 takeaways. It's bring up 3 things in the casual conversation. You may find it stressful to do it in the work setting, but you can train your mind to do it. Speak with the person. Call them instead of texting them. Yeah, I know, Gen Zs and millennials are not going to agree with me, but and smile.
I love that. You are correct, but they might not agree, but it's so important. We're not going to meet people when we're looking like that. We're just not going.
Exactly.
We're not going to find our next job. Even though you might be scrolling through, whatever job site you're on, you might have a better opportunity to meet that person in the Uber, the elevator, what have you, than staring at a job search board on your phone. So
yeah, CEOs talk about they want to act like they're in control of everything, and they say, how do you get to? They say, oh, it was just serendipity. No, they created their luck. They built the muscle memory to capitalize on hidden opportunities, and that's how they succeeded. So people do it. I think calling it serendipity mindset is it's just beautifully packaged is what it does.
Well, and that's what I loved when you and I first talked and you brought it up. I thought, that's exactly what it is. I love it. And the 2 big takeaways I'm going to say for myself are, when we identify what 3 things that we love talking about or that we're interested in, if somebody latches onto one of those, it puts us in our own comfort zone. So that's when we can show up as our calm, authentic self. So they're now playing on our playing field, if you will, so if I were to say, if you brought up magic as one of the things, and even though I'm not a magician, I did try magic, I think, when I was about 8 years old. I got fascinated with it. But just for me, I'm curious about it. So now I'm going to ask you more questions and it lights you up. So now it's putting you in a great place, a calm mindset to be able to share about yourself. And so if we can do that for ourselves, and then again, the person across the table from us or standing next to us in a restaurant or in a cocktail hour, if we can ask them questions that put them in a comfortable spot, that's when we're going to actually really enjoy that meaningful time together.
Yeah, that's a brilliant summary. Absolutely. Get them comfortable, and that's what opens up the world.
And get yourself comfortable. JJ, thank you. What a treat. And I cannot wait for us to discuss your book on a future episode.
Certainly, Eileen. Looking forward to it.
Thank you to everyone at home or on the go for listening. If you find this show meaningful, please hit that follow or subscribe button. It helps other people find what's possible organically. If you have questions about anything we've talked about, drop me a line at podcast@svchange.com. I read every email I get, whether it's an episode idea, a guest recommendation, or just a simple note as to how this conversation impacted you. If all of a sudden serendipity resonated with you, let me know. I'm curious, and tell me 3 interesting things about you or 3 things that you love when you send me that email. I'd love to hear. I'm Eileen Schaefer, and I'll see you on the next episode.